The lawyer looked at my sister and said, "Mrs. Carter, are you absolutely sure you want to contest this, Will?" She laughed. She actually laughed. She said, "Yes, my father wasn't in his right mind." The lawyer nodded slowly. Then he reached into his briefcase and pulled out a sealed envelope. He said, "Your father was hoping you wouldn't say that. I want you to think about that for a second. My father was gone. He had been gone for 3 weeks. And somehow, from beyond that, he had prepared for exactly this moment. He knew his daughter. He knew what she would do, and he was ready. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to the beginning. Because to understand what happened in that lawyer's office, you need to understand who my father was and who Linda is. My father's name was Robert. He grew up with nothing. His parents were farmers. He left school at 16, and he taught himself carpentry by working summers for a local builder. By the time he was 30, he had his own small workshop. He made furniture, tables, chairs, cabinets. Nothing fancy. But everything he made with his hands, and everything was built to last. He worked for 40 years. He wasn't rich, but he saved everything. Every spare dollar went into the bank. No holidays, no new cars, no luxuries. By the time he got sick, he had a house that was fully paid off, his workshop and all the equipment inside it, and about $180,000 in savings. For a man who started with nothing, that was everything. He had 3 kids, me, my brother Daniel, and my sister Linda. I'm the middle child. Daniel is the oldest, Linda is the youngest, and Linda was always a favorite. I say that without bitterness. It's just the truth. She got the car paid for when she turned 18. Dad paid her college tuition in full. He gave her money for her wedding, $15,000. He helped her with a deposit on her first apartment. Daniel, and I never complained. We both worked our way through college. We both figured things out on our own. That was just how it was in our family. Linda needed more, and Dad gave more. We accepted it. Then Dad got his diagnosis. Stage 3 lung cancer. November 2023. The doctors were cautious but honest. Treatment could extend his life, but a full recovery was unlikely. Dad took the news quietly. He went home, made himself a cup of tea, and called each of us separately to tell us. That was the kind of man he was. No drama, no fuss, just, "Here's the situation. I wanted you to hear it from me." Linda's response was different to mine and Daniel's. Within a week, she was visiting every other day, bringing food, offering to drive him to appointments, calling twice a day. Now, on the surface, that sounds lovely, a daughter caring for her sick father. And maybe part of it was genuine. But Daniel and I noticed something. Every visit, Linda would find a way to bring up the house, or the savings, or what Dad planned to do with the workshop. Little comments, casual questions, nothing you could directly call out, but a pattern. In his last few months, Dad asked to see a lawyer alone. He didn't tell any of us directly, but Linda found out somehow. She called me furious. "He's changing the will. He's going to cut me out, I know it." I told her she was being paranoid. I told her Dad wasn't like that. But she wasn't entirely wrong to be worried, because the last time she visited Dad before he became too ill for visitors, they had a fight. A bad one. I wasn't there, but Daniel was in the next room and heard most of it. Linda told Dad he had always given more to Daniel and me, which wasn't even true, and that he owed her. That word, owed. She said he owed her more than what she'd already received. Those were almost the last words she ever said to him face to face. Dad died on a Tuesday morning in February, quietly at home the way he wanted. Daniel and I were with him. Linda arrived 2 hours later. The will reading was scheduled for the following Thursday afternoon. A small office, just the 3 of us and the lawyer, a calm, older man named Mr. Hadley who had apparently known my father for years. Linda brought her own lawyer. I remember thinking that was strange. None of us had been told to bring representation. But I didn't say anything. Mr. Hadley began reading. The will was straightforward. The house to be sold. Proceeds split equally 3 ways. The savings split equally 3 ways. The workshop equipment to Daniel. since he was the only one who actually used any of it and had worked summers there as a teenager. A few personal items directed to specific people. Everything clean, everything fair. More than fair, honestly, given the history. Linda's face was completely unreadable throughout. I watched her. She sat perfectly still, her lawyer beside her with a notepad open, pen ready. Then Mr. Hadley looked up and said, "Before we conclude, I need to inform you of one additional matter. Your father left a sealed envelope in my possession approximately 8 months ago. He was very specific about the instructions attached to it. This envelope is only to be opened if any of you formally contest the terms of this will. If no one contests, the envelope stays sealed, and upon my retirement it will be destroyed unopened." I felt Daniel go still beside me. Mr. Hadley continued, "I want to be clear about what formally contesting means. It means stating, in this room, in front of witnesses, that you believe this will to be invalid. Your father asked me to give each of you a moment to consider before we proceed." The room was silent. I thought, this is over. We take our equal shares. We go home. We grieve. I actually felt relief. Then Linda said, "I contest it. My father was not mentally competent when he signed this document." Mr. Hadley looked at her for a long moment. Then he said, "Very well." He reached into his briefcase. He placed the envelope on the desk. He opened it. Inside was a letter, handwritten, in my father's careful, steady handwriting. The same handwriting that used to leave notes in our lunch boxes when we were kids. And behind the letter, a stack of papers, bank statements, printed and organized, going back 5 years. Mr. Hadley read the letter aloud. I'm going to read it to you exactly as my father wrote it, because every word matters. If you are reading this, one of my children has chosen greed over family. I hoped this letter would never need to be read, but I prepared it because I know my children, and I know that some people cannot help themselves, even when they should. These documents show that between January 2018 and March 2023, 34 withdrawals were made from my personal savings account using a spare bank card I gave to Linda for emergencies only. The total amount withdrawn across these transactions is $94,000. I did not authorize these withdrawals. When I discovered them, I confronted Linda. She told me she intended to pay it back. She has not. I chose not to pursue legal action during my lifetime because she is my daughter, and I did not want to destroy her family. But I am no longer able to protect her from herself. If she is reading this, she has chosen to contest a will that was already more than fair, and I can only hope that seeing these words in my handwriting gives her reason to finally stop. The room was completely silent. Linda's lawyer, who had his pen ready, who had been leaning forward this entire time, slowly closed his notepad. He clicked his pen shut. He straightened his jacket. He stood up, said quietly, "I need to step outside," and left the room. He didn't come back. Linda didn't say a word. She sat completely still for what felt like a very long time. Then she picked up her bag, stood up, and walked out. No apology, no explanation, nothing. Daniel and I sat with Mr. Hadley for another 20 minutes, going through practical next steps in a kind of daze. Mr. Hadley was professional and kind. At the end, he shook both our hands. He said, "Your father was a very thoughtful man." That was all. Daniel and I sat in the car in the parking lot for a long time before either of us could speak. Eventually Daniel said, "Dad knew. He always knew." And then he laughed, but not in a happy way. More like, Of course he knew. I've thought about that a lot since then. My father was not a confrontational person. He spent his whole life letting things go, not because he was weak, but because he valued peace more than being right. He knew about the $94,000 for years. Years! And he said nothing. He just quietly, carefully, made sure that if the moment ever came, the truth would be there, waiting. He just hoped the moment would never come. The house sold 4 months later. Daniel and I each received our shares. I used mine to pay off the remainder of my mortgage. The day the payment cleared, I sat in my kitchen, and I thought about my dad in his workshop, sawdust on his jeans, radio on, building something solid that would last. That's all he ever tried to do. I think he'd have liked knowing the money went somewhere solid. If you've been through something like this, a family member who took more than they were given, or a moment where the truth finally came out after years of silence, I want to hear about it. Drop it in the comments. I read every single one, and more often than not, your stories are more powerful than anything I could write. If this hit close to home, subscribe. I share stories like this every week. Real situations, real emotions, no fluff. I'll see you in the next one.